One of the greatest and most easily recognized Christmas traditions is that big thing behind me, the Christmas tree. As I was telling the kids earlier, just about every single piece of it has an origin story, from the type of tree to the lights to the thing up on top, everything else that we put on it. Everything has a reason that it is the way that it is. And what I want to teach you today is that Christianity is actually a story of life between two very important trees. You see, there is a tree mentioned in Genesis. In the very first book of the Bible, practically the first page of the Bible, there is a tree. And then in Revelation, the very last book of the Bible, there is another tree. But the life that we live on this earth, we live life between the two trees. Now, some of these little tidbits and facts about Christmas trees, some of it is fact, verified with historical documentation, but some of the legends are just legends. You know, they're myths based on some vague reality that have grown into these amazing stories over the years. Let's start with evergreens. Does anybody know why we use evergreens? You probably actually do know this. The reason we use evergreens actually predates Christmas, right? Pagans used to do this thing, the winter solstice, where they would bring in evergreens into their homes as a reminder to celebrate winter, but as a reminder that spring would come. They wanted to put green things in their life in order to combat depression and the fear that the winter cold would never change, that things would always be like that. They would bring a piece of hope into their homes, into their house, to remind them that winter will not last forever. If you are walking through a valley, if you are walking through darkness, it's not going to be forever. There is life coming in spring. And so that's, spring will come, there is hope for a better future. That's why we use the evergreen tree. So when people say, like, Christmas is a pagan holiday, have you ever heard that? It's not true, not at all, but there are pieces of our celebration that did exist before Christianity. We kind of came along and adopted them, right? And we made them mean something different. Now, the medieval period, where most of these traditions come from, they're full of stories that are almost like fairy tales as far as the legends of the origin stories. There's one story, I thought this was really cute. Once upon a time, there was a very poor family, and they didn't have any money to decorate their home for Christmas. And the Christ child, baby Jesus, watching them from heaven, took pity on them because they had nothing to decorate their home with. So he took the cobwebs of their little home and he turned it into silver, and that's where we get tinsel. Who knew, right? That's the legend of tinsel, is that one time Jesus came in and turned cobwebs into silver, and so they using the simple things of their family. There's another story that I told the kids about Martin Luther. He's a very famous theologian, and one winter he was walking through the woods, and he looked up through the pine trees, and he saw the stars shining, and so he thought that they were so beautiful. So he came home, he rushed home, and he went to his wife, and he says, "We have to put lights on a Christmas tree." So they would literally take candles and melt the bottom of the candle and then get it to hold onto the branches of the Christmas tree. And that's how they put lights all over the Christmas tree, which of course is a terrible, terrible idea. I think it's fairly obvious why we switched to electric lights. There was a story of a fire that was in Chicago that got started in a hospital in the 1800s because they were literally attaching burning things to dried out trees in the middle of their homes. It's just a bad idea, you know. Now, there's all these stories of how they used to decorate trees. What I was telling the kids earlier is true about the gingerbreads and the apples. They used to put things on the tree, and then, they would rot and it would be gross, so then they got the tradition of glass versions. But did you know that the original tree topper, we put the star up there because of the star, the story of the three wise men and all of that, right? We're leading our ways towards the star. But the original tree topper used to be little statues of baby Jesus. They used to put baby Jesus up on top of a tree. I don't really know why they switched it. Probably something about it's not a good idea to hoist babies way up into the air. I don't know. So I spent all this time researching all these traditions that we have in the church. But one of the ones I found the most interesting was something called the paradise tree. Some people think that the Christmas tree came from the paradise tree tradition. A long time ago in Europe, Christmas Eve, it didn't used to be called Christmas Eve. They used to call it Adam and Eve Day. Adam and Eve Day. And they would carve a tree out of wood, like an evergreen tree out of wood, and they would carry it around town. They would have a parade, which is the origin of the Christmas parade. They would parade around town and say, hey, everybody, it's time for the miracle play. Now, a miracle play was basically, it was a Christmas skit, because at that time period, there wasn't a lot of literacy. Nobody understood. They couldn't read the Bible, but they knew they needed to tell the story. So what they would do is on Adam and Eve Day, the day before Christmas, they would have this parade where they carry a tree around telling everybody, come on, it's time for the skit. And so they knew the Bible was important. They knew the story needed to be told, but because nobody could read, they would have these skits the day before Christmas so that they could learn about the Bible. That's how they taught people the Bible stories. They would put on skits. So we're talking about the origin of the Christmas tree parade, the Christmas pageant. I mean, it's all built into these stories. In a way, the origin of the Christmas tree is actually a call to better understand this book. Even if you can't read it, we want you to know what's in here so badly. We'll just teach it to you. We'll act it out for you. You got to know this good news that's in here. You see, in Genesis, in the beginning of the Bible with Adam and Eve, they were in the garden, and there was a tree there, the tree of life, right? And this tree was the most important tree. There was another tree, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but that's a whole other story. But as we go through with this tree of life, this source of all life from God, we follow the story of God interacting with humans all the way up to Jesus, and then into the creation of the church, and then beyond that. And then we get to the end in Revelation, the last book of the Bible, in chapter 22, in the last chapter of the Bible. Literally, I'm on the last page of my Bible. Chapter 22, it says this. This is a picture of heaven. It says, chapter 22, verse 1, then an angel showed me a river with the water of life, clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb. And it flowed down the center of the main street. And on each side of the river grew a tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, and with a fresh crop each month. And the leaves were used for medicine to heal the nations. No longer will there be a curse upon anything, for the throne of God and of the Lamb will be there, and his servants will worship him, and they will see his face. So this is a picture of what paradise is going to look like. And I love that imagery. It's like this throne, and there's this crystal clear river. There's a river, it's so clear, the water, with trees along the banks of the river. And the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nation, and nothing cursed will be found anywhere. I mean, if you think about it, our world is really beautiful. One of the things I love about living in Michigan, it's like pure Michigan, right? We've got lakes, and we live in a really beautiful place. But there's always something wrong with the world, right? It's like beautiful, beautiful, not beautiful, beautiful, like there's always something wrong with the pictures. You kind of have to ignore a lot of bad stuff to get excited about this world, the one we live in right now. But what the Bible is saying, that in the end, in heaven, nothing will be cursed. It's the beauty of this earth perfected, right? There's no more hatred or pain. There's no more sorrow. All the broken things of life have been washed away. One of the fundamental pieces of Christianity is recognizing we're not there yet, right? We started in the garden, and we are headed to paradise. We move from one tree to the next, but right now, we are stuck in the middle. We are living between the trees. God promised paradise. He says that he has prepared a city for them, a crystal clear river flowing from the throne with trees on each side. Nothing accursed will be found. We've talked about this before, right? We don't know literally what heaven is going to look like, right? I don't have any details in the Bible. We don't know what's metaphor and what's concrete. We don't know the physical reality. But what we do know, the important part, is that there's no more pain, there's no more evil, and we are going to experience the presence of God with no evil in the world. That's the gift, that's the promise. Now, our other scripture lesson is from Hebrews chapter 11. And Hebrews 11, it's all about faith. It's all about believing that there is something better out there. It starts out in Hebrews 11, verse 1. It says, faith is the confidence that what we hope for will actually happen. It gives us assurance about things we cannot see. Faith is believing that there is something more, something better, something worth going after. And then this whole chapter 11 in Hebrews, is a pretty famous chapter actually. It just kind of catalogs. It goes through all the people in history who have had a lot of faith. It talks about Abraham. It talks about Moses, like the heroes of the faith. And then we get to verse 13. And it says, all these people died still believing what God had promised them. They did not receive what was promised, but they all saw it from a distance and they welcomed it. They all agreed that they were foreigners and nomads here on earth. See, what it's saying is that all those heroes died without seeing the end, without getting what they were promised, but they saw it. They knew it was there on the horizon. From a distance, they saw that. And I want you to think about that for a second, because in this life, we don't get to perfection. We don't get what was promised yet. We believe in something we cannot see. It says in verse 16, it says, but they were looking for a better place, a heavenly homeland. That is why God is not ashamed to be called their God, because he has prepared a city for them. They desired a better country. Therefore, God's not ashamed to be called their God. He doesn't want them to live in this world. He wants us to live in that world. This world that we were built for. Have our hearts set on a better life and a better world. I see this. The problem I see so much in our world, in our nation, in our town, is that so many people have learned how to settle. Right? Like we look around and we think, good enough. Right? We look at this brokenness. It's kind of like a lot of us have the mentality of like a football team that just shows up to the game. Right? We just look around and we're like, hey, we dressed up, we showed up, that's enough, right? That's all you got to do. But that's not how you win the game. That's not how you chase perfection. That's not how you improve with every drill, with every practice, with football and with church. It's not about dressing up and showing up. There is a picture, an idea, something that we are chasing, something that we are working to achieve, and we are not there yet. So in your life, do you look around at the brokenness of this world and do you think, good enough? Or do you desire for something better? Do you look at the stories on the news and think, man, I cannot wait to get to a world where all this pain is gone? Amen. I can't wait to get to where I never have to watch another news story about a shooting. Amen? I never want to watch another news story about an outbreak or children dying or bombs going off or wars. I never want to watch it again. I yearn for a world where none of that stuff exists anymore. And I'm not talking about, the question is, are we content in this life? And I'm not talking about being comfortable or getting more stuff or living a cushy life. I'm talking about, do you have a discontent in your heart? Do you feel uncomfortable living in a world that's full of evil? Like, it's a kind of a silly example, but do you ever sit where your leg falls asleep and you have to move? Because if you don't move, you'll go crazy, right? It's like you have to move. I can't keep sitting and the pins and needles, it's just driving you crazy. Like, that should be what it's like to live in this broken world. Oh, I can't sit comfortably here. I don't like this anymore. What I'm trying to ask you is, do you feel that way about evil in your world? Do you find yourself bothered where you can't stop thinking about the injustice in the world, the hurt and the sorrow and the evil that's all around us? And here, I'm going to use myself for an example. Because here's the thing. I don't feel that uncomfortable in this world. I have become extremely comfortable with the evil that's all around us, right? I'm so desensitized to it. I hear so many stories. Sometimes it barely moves my heart. I'll hear horrible stories about shootings or whatever it is. And it's like, I mean, there was a mass shooting 2 weeks ago, right? And I barely shrug anymore. These things that are so horrifying, and I just kind of read the news story and I go, oh, and then I scroll to the next one. We've become so used to it. It's not even remarkable anymore. And I wonder, have we given up? Like, have we given up on the idea of living in a better world? Are we settling in? Are we getting too comfortable with a broken world? Or maybe we think that this is what we deserve. This brokenness is what we deserve because we're broken people, right? Hebrews, verse 13, it says, they did not receive what was promised, but they saw it from a distance. They welcomed it. They agreed that they were foreigners and nomads here on earth. Obviously, people who say such things are looking forward to a country they can call their own. I think that's why we try to get comfortable on this earth. We think that this world is where we belong. Broken world for broken people. I'm broken, so I don't deserve a good world. I don't deserve heaven. I live here in this brokenness because that makes sense to me. For so many of us, there's people who are in situations of poverty or drugs or homelessness, and people are there. Maybe it's not because they want to be there, but they're there because they believe that's what they deserve. If you talk to these people, a lot of folks, when you talk to them, they actually believe this is what I deserve. The bad things in my life, it's my fault because I'm a bad person, right? And it's not hard to give a homeless guy some food or a place to sleep for a night. What's hard is convincing that man that he deserves more, that he is deserving of love, to teach him how to encourage them, to empower them, to teach them to get off the floor, to stand up and receive the gift of life. So many of us reject what God is offering, the love that God is offering, because we think we don't deserve it. And we don't. But that's not how gifts work. He doesn't give it to you because you deserve it. He gives it to you because he loves you. He wants you to have it. We look at our mistakes. We made our bed and we think, I gotta lie in it. That's why it's so vital to pour love and dignity and respect into people's lives, because it is so challenging to convince someone that they were made for more than brokenness. You do not have to accept the brokenness of this world and say, well, that's just how it is. There is something better. They say that your homeland gives you your values, gives you your goals, gives you your relationships. So ask yourself, where do you make your bed? Where is your home? Where do you get your values from? Is it this world? Is it the United States of America? Is it this little town of Flushing? But what if we started to believe that there was something more? Right? What if we started to believe that we were reaching for the kingdom of God, where there is no more pain, there is no more brokenness, rather than the kingdoms of this world? Verse 15, I want to read it again. It says, if they had longed for the country that they came from, they could have gone back. But they were looking for a better place, a heavenly homeland. That's why God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. If you want to go back and make this world all there is, you can do that. But Christians, we believe in a better world, a heavenly country. The first step towards eternity is recognizing that you were built for eternity. God made you not with this broken world in mind. God made you with forever in mind. We are supposed to be strangers in this world. We are supposed to be uncomfortable with evil. We are seeking a homeland, and we're not there yet. So the first step is realizing that there is something better for you. God has better and bigger plans for this world. And so our job, our response is really simple. Don't get too comfortable. If you are grieving, if you are broken, don't get comfortable in that, because you're not going to stay there forever. Our God is a God of healing who will bring wholeness to everyone. It might seem obvious, but I want you to actually look forward to the future. Don't look around when you're trying to figure out the future. God has promised a better future. That's the core of our faith, assurance of things that we hope for, not the stuff we see right now. We need confidence of the things we have not seen. Faith is not just believing that God is here right now. It's also trusting that God will reward those who seek him, trusting that God is moving us towards eternity, moving us towards perfection. Evil lives where you let it. Evil lives where you let it. The future starts in that moment when you sit forward and you look around and say, this is not enough. I'm not going to be a person from this world. I'm not going to settle for this world. I'm not going to be a person who lives in that brokenness and settles for that. God has something better. We can do better, and so we do. We are comfortable when we are so comfortable in this life, and that will bleed into everything we do. We're always waiting for someone else to solve our problems. In the church, I find that there's lots of suggestions, but very few people willing to make that change. Right? There's no shortage of good ideas, but there's a shortage of people willing to make a difference. In that story about Martin Luther looking through the trees and seeing the stars, and that's why we put lights on the tree, he really was walking through, and he came home, and they put lights on the tree, which don't do. The candles on the tree, that was just crazy to read about. But what struck Martin Luther that night, when he was looking at the stars, the reason he needed the lights on the tree was that he realized where Jesus was coming from. He's like, back then they kind of understood heaven was like up in the sky, right? And he's out there walking in the woods and he's looking at the stars and he's like, God was up there. Jesus was up in heaven. He gave up all of that to come down here. Jesus came to us from heaven. God loves you so much that he was willing to step away from the stars, to step away from heaven, to come close to you. The lights on the Christmas tree represent that Jesus walked away from all that so he could come and bring you home. I think that's an example for us in our lives. Jesus stepped out of his comfort zone, out of heaven to teach us the way. And in our lives, we have to get out of our comfort zone to reach into other people's lives. We got to pick ourselves up off the couch, get uncomfortable to teach other people the way. I think empowerment and helping other people, it begins when we stop just handing them things. We start partnering with people. I think in this season, in the Christmas season, there's such a temptation to dump good things on people, right? Like we just give a gift, give money, give whatever, just dump good stuff on it and then they can figure it out. But that's not what God did for us. God didn't just like dump good stuff on Mary and Joseph, right? He didn't just dump it on them. He, like gifts and money and help, he stepped into their world. He gave himself, right? This church does and continues to do incredible ministry. Like, I don't want to misunderstand. I'm so proud of you guys. We give, thousands of dollars and toys and gifts and food and clothes. We've got the bases covered as a church. We're so good at loving our community. We do a lot of good in our community, but I think the next step is that we have to get a little uncomfortable. Step into someone's world, partner with them to get them out of that mindset that this world is what they deserve. I'm not going to lie, that terrifies me, right? Because this is out of my comfort zone too. I am good at two things, reading the Bible and talking, right? Those are my skills, right? And I like donating my time and my money, but to sit down and connect with people, to get into their lives, to try and pour into them and let them know that they are loved and valued beyond the brokenness of this world, that's scary, right? That's a next level. I've always loved the Christmas tree. I just didn't realize there was so much in that symbol. We live life between the trees. We're not in the Garden of Eden anymore, but we're not in paradise yet. We are in the middle. We're not done yet. God promised us paradise. He wants us to want it. He wants us to chase after it. He encourages us to go after a higher standard than the brokenness of the world. Don't look around at our world and say, yeah, this is good enough. I'll deal with this. That's fine. It's good enough. Don't look around and say that this is what we deserve. God stepped into our world to show us how to get uncomfortable with evil. And Jesus stepped into our world so we could step into the worlds of the people around us. So I'll leave you with this. May you rejoice in how far you've come. May you realize how far you have to go. And may God be proud to call you his own. Amen.